Bataan in Compostela Valley. The story is about a man named Dante. At that time, Rappler went to Compostela Valley 3 days after the disaster. When we walked into Compostela Valley, we found out that there were still bodies lying around in the area. The president was at the evacuation center, but 3 blocks down, there were still bodies down the road. So when we walked in, what we saw were bodies laying down, 18 bodies across the road. And this is the story of Dante, a man we found who was looking through every body and trying to find his family.
Nung nangyari yung trahedya, wala ako dito. May mga nakaligtas na kapitbahay namin doon. Tapos ang sabi nila, yung lahat ng pamilya ko raw, nadala sa ilog. Nagbabakasakali lang po ako na sana buhay pa po sila. Pumunta ako sa munisipyo, tiningnan ko lahat yung mga dala na patay. Tiningnan ko sa mga korinarya. Wala pa rin sila hanggang ngayon. Bumalik ulit ako dito dahil may mga bagong nakuha na patay. Tinitingnan ko baka sakali na may isa na makuha ko para mapailibing namin na mapayapa siya. Hihintayin ko hanggang matapos dito. Pag sumusuko na dito, hindi na sila nagre-rescue. Tatanggapin ko na lang po kung ano nangyari sa kanila. Magsisimula. Kung paano magsimula. Tatanggapin ko na lang kahit masakit.
Such a tragic story. How are you able to handle being there in situations like that?
Do it because you have to do it. And I think that's how most reporters do their jobs. Dante lost 18 of his family members after Pablo, including 3 of his children, his wife, his father-in-law, son-in-law, everything. So we never saw Dante again, and we suspect he's still haunting the funeral parlors, looking for a body to bury.
All right, well, now it's time for us to speak about solutions in technology. I'd like to bring on stage here Google's product manager for Southeast Asia. He acts as the voice of the C Asia user to the product teams within Google. Please welcome Andrew McGlinchey.
Hi, so everyone must be still having some energy left. I know it's close to lunchtime, but I wanted to, I'm very happy to be invited here today to get to talk to everybody a little bit about some positive solutions. So we've mentioned lots of really exciting, interesting things so far this morning. And I'm privileged to tell you a little bit about some of Google's crisis response activities. And it's kind of exciting and it's kind of uplifting, so it's good news. My name is Andrew. I'm a product manager for Google. I look after Southeast Asia. I'm based in Singapore. I'm originally from Canada, but I've lived in the region almost 7 years. And my story in crisis response starts back when I first began based in Singapore, looking at Southeast Asia, and Ondoy came to Philippines. And Eileen Apollo, who you'll hear from later this afternoon, my colleague at Google, she was our only Googler in the Philippines at the time. She, of course, knew exactly the magnitude of the crisis and was raising the alarm within the company and so on. And between us and many other volunteers, we tried to kind of arrange things so that we could organize some information on the internet, use Google's power and the ability to host things, and make it possible to find information that people needed. Now, we were kind of being scrappy. We were being a bit ad hoc. Right? We'd ask for help from different people in Mountain View in different parts of the world. And yeah, it was satisfying to cobble some things together. Now, the good news is that over time, Google has gotten a bit better at this, because when we were doing this thing ad hoc, we told ourselves, boy, wouldn't it be good if there was a kit? Like, we're inventing this as we go, but it'd be much better if it was repeatable. So over time, actually, Google itself has managed to get itself so that we have extended some crisis response tools, and I'll tell you a bit about how that story started, and then a little bit about what it consists of. But I think that this is kind of what all of us here today are hoping to do for the Philippines, right? Is that if we're preparing now, while everything is good, this is the moment to get things right, so that when something happens, as it inevitably will somewhere, we're already prepared. So, okay, this is a little bit about the power of how technology can help within all of this in all of this situation. So here's where Google really the story kind of begins, especially for the crisis response program, especially, and for Google it kind of triggered in the Haiti earthquake in 2010, which was a massive humanitarian crisis, of course. And one place where Google was able to make an impact straight away was our ability to have sourced excellent quality satellite data. So there are lots of there are satellite photography providers, and Google has got relationships in order to evaluate them, to purchase them, and even to help to ask the companies to maneuver the satellites over the areas. So they're able to very quickly acquire, license, and even do the technology to get the photographs. So you have to kind of do some processing to stitch them together and make them appear in the right place, and then publish them so that everyone could see the nature of this damage. And what this enables us to do, I mean, it looks like it's just sort of looking at shock and horror, but actually, in this case, or agencies like the World Bank are able to look at some of this satellite imagery and use it for figuring out where's the damage. You can actually do an assessment, and you can do things like figuring out exactly where the refugee camps are and enable people to find them. And even now, this is where some of the power, if you take information and put one kind of information here and another kind of information and juxtapose them, put them together, 1 + 1 can equal 3. Because here you can have locations of clinics and location of refugee camps. And of course, it matters that you know which one is near you and where you should put a clinic near where people are, and you should tell people where the clinic is if they're already there, right? So by juxtaposing and putting all this information in one single visualization, it actually has a multiplying effect in terms of the benefit of it. So all of this is kind of where Google can be useful. Now, Google's overall mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. So in a crisis situation, there's some things Google can't do. Google doesn't know how to manufacture tents. Our engineers are not much good at distributing food. We have big cafeterias in Mountain View, but that's not a scalable way to feed people in a situation like this, of course. Generally, right, Google is only good at a few certain things where we would like to try to contribute. And so in this sense, it is helping to organize all the information that may be out there from different sources, be it governmental, be it news, be it private people, juxtapose it, put it together, so we have this 1 + 1 = 3 multiplier effect, and then host it in a very public, open, and scalable way. And so this is really where we can pull everything together and provide some value. And so this is what it's like. This is the idea, is to make this critical information really valuable. So in fact here, this is an example of how really we were, the crisis response team, where we'd been doing things ad hoc before, kind of turned into a proper kit in Haiti. So here what we've got is a landing page, a Google landing page for this particular disaster, which incorporated all the information about how you can donate, where you can help, information like we saw of the refugee camps and the information and so on, put them all together in one single place that can support it when there are millions and millions of hits coming to this website, that can actually bring together from one concentrated place all the different resources and organize them in a way. So this is really the kind of the critical point where you can pull it together and host it. Now, later this afternoon, Eileen will show a little bit more of some of the details of it, but I wanted to kind of touch on how the whole thing fits together. So, okay, you may say, great, Google makes a landing page, but during a crisis, it's hard enough getting on Wi-Fi even in this room when there's so many people. When there's a crisis, like, really, does the internet actually still work? And the answer is, surprisingly, it often does. So here's an example from 2011 in Japan, after the terrible crisis there. This is an open letter of thanks from a user in Tokyo, who said that even though many things, their desktop email systems weren't working, their phones, their SMS happened not to be working, but they could use Gmail. They were able to access the internet. And so in many cases, it seems surprising, but that actually the internet is amazingly robust. Here's an example of the earthquake in Chile. So these spikes are the daily, everyday, how many, the traffic, right? So at night, of course, the traffic goes down, and the little dip in the middle is the middle of the day when people are away from their desks and going to lunch. You can actually see the shape of lunchtime on the tracks. So on this particular day, of course, was a catastrophic day, but you can see when it goes down, it doesn't go down to zero, and it quickly rebounds because people are able to very quickly use the internet. So the point here being that, yes, the internet is not as fragile, in fact, it's very anti-fragile. Because if we think about what's the origin of the internet, right, it was developed for defense technology. The original technology of it, a lot of it was built around DARPANET, which is this US military attempt to make things robust for communications. So the idea was that the US didn't, if you wanted to transmit something from one computer to another over a network, if there's only one cable, that's a single point of failure. The whole internet is built so that if you can't find one, you can search and find others. So even in this case, if you think, well, in Philippines, it's all very well to talk about Japan, but Philippines has less infrastructure. Okay, that may be so, but look at Haiti, which is really a worst case scenario. Even under that catastrophic massive earthquake in a place that's incredibly underdeveloped like Haiti in the first place, in this case here, what they found was there was a cable that failed during the quake there's a cable that went to the Bahamas. That one failed. But others, there was microwave radio towers that were still operational. There were several ISPs that were in fact still able to operate either communicating within the island and even get internationally. So all of this point being, even in the case of a big crisis, yeah, actually the internet does keep working, or it can often still be working. So it's very valuable. One last example here. This is during the Haiti crisis. Massive drop, of course, in the amount of traffic that we say, but it didn't hit zero, and very quickly people are using the internet to find each other, to find information that they need, to tell each other that they're okay, tell each other they're not okay, and use this as a central communications point to get things around. Now, important also to note, right, is that even if you can't access the internet, everybody else who's not directly affected can and needs to know things. So here's an example of during the Chile earthquake. It's maybe a bit hard to see, but this massive spike is the time when there's a massive spike here, another one for the Japan earthquake, where people would search for tsunami, a gigantic spike around the moment when there's this big event that causes people to be interested in that. And then this other example that I list a screenshot of down here, Person Finder. This is a central place, Eileen will show it properly, but there's a central place where basically you can say, if you're looking for people who may be lost, you can report the name and last location of someone you're looking for, or you can report the name saying, I am this person, or I know where this person is, and so you can connect each other, which is a critical use case. So all of these things, even if, for example, you are affected and you can't directly reach the internet, but maybe you do have SMS or phone or radio or something, by having the internet as a central place where you can collect all this information, then people on the edges can still access it, even if you yourself might be temporarily cut off from directly accessing it. So the reach of the internet is gigantic. And one more example of that reach is on the homepage of Google, which is typically the number 1 or the number 2 most popular site in any given country. When there are critical events like this, the team changes the front page to have a notice that gives someone critical information about some major, often literally earth-shaking event that happens for people. So that's kind of how the technology is actually robust. The technology has all this reach. So okay, let's get a little bit specific here. What are the things that really we can use the technology to do? So in fact, when there's a big crisis, there's kind of a couple major use cases that people have. So one of them is someone to say, I've been affected by the crisis, but I'm okay. And so you want to tell other people, I'm okay, you don't have to panic. That's one. Other people say, I'm affected by the crisis, and I'm not okay. I need to know where to go. I need help. I need to know how I can get somewhere. Right? So the people who are themselves affected need information. Then the other side of the equation is people who can help, and they need to know where to go. They need to know how to get there. They need to know who has the most urgent needs and how to organize things. So all of those things come together most easily on a map. And so here's an example of a Google crisis map, which the Google Crisis Response Team assembles when there's an event of the kind of magnitude. So here actually what it's showing on this screenshot is this is embedded on the Denver Post, right? So there's a standard website you can go to on Google, but anybody else who is having traffic, a likely place that somebody might go, you can embed this map the same common map inside there, so it can be freely distributed around the web. So it's embeddable and shareable. It's accessible, meaning it'll handle the amount of traffic. That's one thing Google can handle, is if there are millions of people hitting a website, that can bring down a lot of servers. But Google is equipped to be able to handle large spikes like that. So that's one thing that we can do. It can keep it fast and responsive, even with very large amounts of data and a lot of traffic. And of course, all of this can be accessed on desktop or on mobile. So all of this, what it does, it pulls together a lot of critical information, satellite imagery, fire perimeters, evacuation zones, flood levels, right? We can pull all this together and display it. Of course, the trick is we have to have that information in the first place to assemble it. And that, a lot of it is what we're here for today. But anyway, so once we have it, this is one thing we can do with it. Another thing we can do with data is this public alerts location. And Google tries to amalgate, to bring together all the different public alerts from different organizations. So it could be about disease outbreaks, it could be about extreme weather, it could be about flooding, other events that come from all different places. So there's kind of a standard reporting protocol for events that people can put them all together. And with this here, we can do this organization where we bring together all the different alerts, superimpose them on a map, and make them much more easy to consume when they're reported this way. So this is another, so we have the maps and we have this other, the public alert event system, which is another way that we can, in a large scalable way, bring together public information and put it in one place. And then here's Person Finder, which I alluded to. Here it is, the Japanese version. And this one is kind of astonishing because you can really, there's examples in Japan where there were people stuck in shelters, and they had actually been writing the names of who was there on whiteboards, without being aware that there was this internet system. So what people did is they would take photographs of these whiteboards and put them on Picasa and share them to each other, and then there were volunteers who would transcribe the names. So somebody else far away could say, well, okay, even though I can't reach them, even though I can at least look up the name and find out that this person is in fact safe and he's at this location. Right? So this is kind of what Person Finder is all about. And by doing it, it really lets us get there. So, okay, what do we need to make all this stuff possible? Let's just sort of put the last couple pieces together. So this is what we can get, right? How do we do it? And what is our mission here today when we're trying to accomplish these things? So during this crisis here, when the water is almost up to the basketball net, that's not the moment to be trying to learn XML, right? Now is the time when we'd be planning out how to do it, right? So we should be planning now and figuring out how do we do it. So what do they have to do? One really important thing is to figure out how to make this data be open. For example, it can often be that some information, such as the location of clinics or the location of power stations and so on, might be kind of hard to get at, not for any real reason, just sort of bureaucracy, right? Who's the person that has to say, okay, under what is the copyright of this data? Should we open it to this and that? They could be complicated. They're legitimate things. Now, during a crisis, that's the last time you want to be running around trying to arrange that, right? So ideally, we find all the sources, we find out what is the information that people need, and you get the sources ahead of time so that in the event that something happens, the people who know they're going to have the data already have the protocols, they know how to transmit it. They've already got the rights arranged so that it's going to be free and open to share. These are the kinds of things that will be critical to have on hand, ready to go in the event of a crisis. Places like where there's going to be power, how do you track them, the landslides, and so on. Now, of course, Google can help host them and put them together and show them in a good way, but Google ourselves, it really relies on the people who actually know these things, the government agencies, the individuals, the volunteers, the NGOs. This is where it really comes from. Our role at best is to put it together, organize that information. That's something we can do. So when you do that, of course, you need a common standard. So there's a couple of common standards. Like I mentioned, the Common Alerting Protocol. That's a global internet standard for reporting something significant, like some alert. There's things like KML. That's a Google standard for map information. So there's several open standards. And the more we stick to those, the easier it is to pass information around from one organization to another and have them all smoothly mesh together. And then the final thing is that all of this really counts on having volunteers who really do the heavy lifting, right? So we can help organize the information and put it together, but in the end, it's the people on the ground who are going to be delivering the food, laying the sandbags, reporting on the flooding, reporting on everything, right? So all of this is really just to empower the many millions of heroes who are really doing the work. And so by organizing the world's information, we can help each other. One critical way that we can help each other is through volunteering to do MapMaker. And this is actually what I wanted to do. Many of you, I'm sure, have used MapMaker or seen it. In fact, how many have used MapMaker ever, or first of all, used it? A few, okay, good. Know what it is? How many know what MapMaker is, more or less? Okay, good. So this would be worthwhile to show a little demo, because a lot of people see, but I'll just take 2 minutes to show you what MapMaker is. Basically, it's like Wikipedia for maps. So it lets you create and edit the maps of, well, in this case, of the Philippines. Okay, so what this is here, if you just go to google.com/mapmaker, this is a publicly open, you just have to log in with your account. So this here is, all of these maps are actually user-generated, human-generated. Now what I can do is I'm going to select, I'm just going to pick an example road segment here. All right, this street. So I've just selected that street. I lost the selection, there we go. Next. Now what I can do is I can edit it. So the idea is that the people who live there are the people who know best how it is. So a lot of Manila is very well mapped, but still most of the Philippines is not well mapped. Many cities, many towns are not mapped. And in fact, there are map-up organizations. There's Google student ambassadors set up here who can show you how. And so this is something that anyone can do, can sign up and map any area that you know. If you come from some part of the world or some part of Philippines where you know this is the building, this is the name of it, this is the road, you can look at the satellite and trace the shapes. This is critically, vitally important information for people when they are at a time when it's necessary for rescue. So I won't actually edit that, but in fact, anyone can edit. They're community moderated, right? So if I made this edit, if I changed the name of this road, somebody else would say, well, this guy actually, my edit wouldn't go live automatically because I haven't earned my credibility in Philippines. Somebody else would look at the road and say, actually, no, reject, right? So it's hard to vandalize, but if you've done enough, if you've made a few edits, you're quickly trusted, and then your edits go directly live. So you can edit, you can add new listings, you can add schools, add shelters directly into MapMaker. So this is a free, open tool that anybody can contribute to, and that's something we can do now, long before there's any sort of crisis. So there it is. There's MapMaker. I just wanted to very briefly show you that quick demo of it. And so this is it, basically. Before we're in this dire situation, this is our opportunity to find the right information and make sure that we know how to get it in an open standard, in an open way, and think already now about how we can share this info so that in the event of a crisis, Google and others can help organize this information and then really help mobilize those individual heroes who are the ones who actually make it all happen. Thanks very much. That's all from me from Google. And we have time for a couple of brief Q&As, I think.
Yes. Thank you very much,
Yes, we do.
Andrew.